Some kids are expelled, some kids are in the foster program.
Kids that have their belongings in a paper bag, that go from house to house.
There are a few who are just angry and they don't want to talk to me or anyone else.
They take a little more time, a little more understanding, and those are the kids that we try to reach.
Just 10 minutes ago, a kid who's been in foster care for 11 years told me that 90% of the time the adults who want him to trust them turn out not to be trustworthy. And that's the norm for our kids instead of the exception.
If anybody's familiar with what's called ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience, all of these kids have high ACE scores. And so if you have high ACE scores, it's said that you'll either have health problems or interaction with law enforcement, negative interaction.
It's usually the ones that are on the lower socioeconomic scale that have no other recourse available to them.
Well, in this facility, we average around 50 kids a day, and probably 40 of them on any given day are going back to the community. So, and almost 100% of these kids have school issues, either attendance, behavior, or just have not engaged in school. So there's a nonstop need for this.
Hundreds of kids get expelled from school. Hundreds of kids are not attending school just because they're not good with the regular public school system.
We want to help these kids get through high school because that's a milestone, and if they can get there.
McAdams Academy offers lots of times the last best chance that some of these kids have for an education.
That's one step further along the way, and if they don't get there, then there's a whole variety of issues. Milestones are not going to hit, successes are not going to achieve, and likely we're going to be funding them in another system.
Well, when you follow that path, a large number of Black and brown kids are the ones that end up in the penal system. So we were, in a sense, providing that school to prison pipeline by expelling. Because if you're out of school for a year, what's the probability that you're going to go back? And if you don't go back to school, then the probability is even greater that you're going to end up in prison. So you see how it balloons.
So growing up here, being born and raised in Wichita, I grew up around gangs, guns, and drugs. I was blessed to meet a family in our community that needed more resources. A young lady had been expelled from school and running away from home and being raised by her grandmother, and she started school here at McAdams. And so I came out to check on her. I met Chuck, some of the other staff, and really loved what they were doing.
I cannot blame others. I cannot blame my son. He just started struggling. So he ended up he got into a problem. Made a comment, he got into a problem. So he ended up being on the U. So after being the U, we tried to enroll him. Obviously, they were not going to take him back on East High, and nobody would. It was pretty hard for the family. It was kind of we were struggling, and then that's when we knew about McAdams. I didn't know it was that exists a school that will take kids like they got expelled and nobody wants them, because we felt like, what are we going to do? I mean, he's barely starting high school, and like, now what's next?
We understand that it's difficult to have 3 kids, and all of a sudden this third kid is like, oh my gosh, what happened? What did I do wrong? My other kids weren't like that.
So Kasim was expelled from the school he was attending his 8th grade year about November. Just one middle school, one high school. And I was just kind of given no option, like, he's expelled, but he has to continue to go to school. And I was like, what am I supposed to do?
I became familiar with McAdams when I served on the local school board, USD 259. And at that time, my focus was on students that were being expelled, and there was no alternative program in place.
The town I'm in, there's not like alternative for middle school kids, so I was kind of in a bind. Stumbled upon McAdams and came up here and enrolled him. He did really well his first year, so we decided to go ahead after his expulsion date to continue to let him stay at McAdams.
So when they refer us here, I mean, I was expecting like the staff, like being rude, because the kids they're taking. And we got surprised when we met Shock and their stuff. I mean, they were. I mean,
pretty good.
They were awesome. Like they took like a weight off of us, like a concrete, or I mean, this slab on our back. They said, "Okay, don't worry, we'll work with your son."
The couple of things we primarily try to impress on kids: respect for authority, and that actions have consequences. But the Holy Spirit tells us when to show grace.
I think, again, this is the compassion for the people that McAdams is serving is a heart issue.
So I've gotten in my car, driven down the street for a kid who's walking away, and I got this old convertible. I make a deal with him. We'll put the top down, we'll drive around a little bit. Kid says, I've never ridden in a convertible before. And then he comes back.
Some of the society likes to react with, you deserve what you get. You've written the check, now you got to pay for it, consequences, whatever. All that's not invalid, but there has to be a way to push beyond pointing fingers and getting right to the needs that need to be met.
So at times, there will be an incident. So earlier this year, there were 2 kids, very angry, very destructive, in the hallway, trying to get into the classroom where things are relatively calm, other than the people banging on the doors. And then pretty soon, they've calmed down enough, and I'm talking to the teacher on the radio, and I think maybe you could come out and talk to these guys for a little bit. It actually was Rebecca. She's out sitting cross-legged on the floor with these 2 kids, showing them some stuff on the computer that will help them get schoolwork done. And once again, I just love Rebecca because she's able to get down on the floor with the kids. She didn't have to be in this school. She's good at it, and she wants to be here, and she's got the gifts to make her effective here. And it's a picture of Christ.
Our ratio is lower than public schools. We try to keep a 1-to-5 ratio.
He's very smart. However, he struggles in a traditional school setting. So having smaller class sizes, less people to interact with throughout the day was really beneficial for him.
That ratio is important because the higher the ratio, the less time you have to get to know these kids.
But as we went and keeping up with them, he started learning something new about discipline. As soon as he showed up here in the morning, we were dropping in he has to put a polo shirt and look nice and good discipline. So he started doing pretty good.
And so Chuck's passion and the school really has a place in my heart because there's 2 things that can really turn a kid's life around. One is education, and 2 is employment. And so those are the goals for my juvenile intervention unit as well as a board member for McAdams Academy.
He went to Westside, right? And he was doing good there till the pandemic started. When that school, the online school, started kicking in, he started at home.
He was frustrated.
I mean, he was so frustrated. He wanted to come and finish his senior year here. He was behind. Real very bad. And he started here in October, entering November, and by January, he was done with his senior year. He graduated and he kicked the discipline kick that he had 2 years ago here, that even he switched his friends. He switched the people around him. Even he enrolled in the Marines, and he's still waiting to be called. He trains twice a week with them. I mean, what I talk to Chuck about this, we feel like very blessed, very, very blessed. Like there's people that are willing to work with kids. Like when you think there's no option, when you think that everybody's shutting the door on you.
Above all, like, he's so lovable and he's so smart and he's got so many talents, and they know God has a bigger plan for him. I know he has a bigger plan for him. I give that to McAdams because they invested in him when they didn't have to.
I know from personal experience the difference that education can make in your life. And because I know that, it's very easy for me to see education as the equalizer. And if you see education as the equalizer, then you understand the need to make sure we're educating all students.
The worst thing you can do to a kid, I would recommend to other families to never give up on him or her. I'm not saying I accept what he's done, because that's not right, but do not give up on him. There's always good people that are willing to help you.